Okay, Rabbi say, Hayem. Shlishi, today's Tuesday. It's Teves, it's Chamisha BiTeves. And as you know, today is the 30th anniversary of the Dan Notzach, of the Sfarim, of the Rabbi, of Chassidim, of Agudas Chassidim Chabad. And then, 30 years ago today, it was also a Tuesday of Parshas Vayigash, like it is today. And the Rebbe spoke on that occasion from the Chitas of today, the Parshas Shavua of today. If you go through the Torah, how many aliyahs are there? We did the math in a class that I gave before I came here. There are 54 Parshas. So how much is 7 times 54? It's 378. There were 378 chitases in the Chumash. There is not a single other that comes close to being precise for Chamisha BiTeves as Tuesday of Parshas Vayigash. There's no place in the Chumash. In other words, it's so clear that the date is connected to the Parshas Shavua. It's absolutely goloi. Right? What does it say in today's Chitas? Oid Yosef Chai. Which is the whole story of the Sfarim. The Taina was that it's the opposite of Oid Yosef Chai, and the Didan Notzach is how a Goy acknowledges Oid Yosef Chai. Now where do you see Oid Yosef Chai? So as the Rebbe explained it, Zare B'Chayim is a raya for Hu B'Chayim. Because the Chassidim are going in the ways of the Rebbe, that's a raya for the Inyan of Hu B'Chayim. This is what the Rebbe said. But more importantly and more personally, how does the Chitas of today finish? What's the last words of today's Parsha? V'atechi ruach yankev aviyam. That's how the Parsha finishes. Zokt Rashi shor so'olov shchina. That for 22 years Yankev was in a matziv, as much as you could say by a tzaddik, of the opposite of Simcha. And because Eina Shechina Sheira Ela Mitoich Simcha, so by Yankev Avinu, there was a deficiency in Ruach HaKodesh. However you understand what Ruach HaKodesh means by such a tzaddik, and when Yankev discovers, when it's revealed that Oid Yosef Chai, so Yankev Avinu was again in the mind of the matzav of Simcha, V'atechi Olav, V'atechi Ruach Yankev Avinu Shas Alashim. And the Rebbe said this in the Sikha Tuesday 30 years ago. He didn't say Hezekiah, today I got my Ruach HaKodesh back, because we don't have the slightest idea what Ruach HaKodesh means b'chlal. We don't understand what it means, different levels of Ruach HaKodesh and a Siluk and a Hamshach. The bottom line is the Rebbe made it so clear that this date, and the Parshas Shavua, the Chitas of today made it so clear that this date and this event is such an incredible simcha that it has to do Pashut with the Rebbe's in Ruach HaKodesh. So it's a moidenliche yomtiv. Didan Notzach, Teves. And of course, it officially became a yomtiv the following year. In other words, it's 30 years since the miracle of Didan Notzach, but it's 29 years since the kriyas of the Moyed of Didan Notzach. And Tafshin Memches, I actually this morning copied for myself the whole Sikha of Tafshin Memches, Shabbos. And I looked it through this morning in Yeshiva, on the way to Yeshiva and so on. The Sikha of Tafshin Memches, 1988, that's 29 years ago today, was Shabbos. And the Rebbe spoke Yemolt that the year after the Nes, it becomes a Yom Tif. The Rebbe said, Yomim ha'elin niskarim v'nasim. These days are remembered. And when they're remembered, they reoccur. Right? There's a Teves Arizal Ayidud. Arizal says that when a Yom Tif comes, and Yidden remember the Yom Tif, for Nasim, all the Ruchnias, the Kinyonim that are associated with that Yom Tif happen again. So when Chassidim commemorate Chamisha BiTeves, Hayom Meil Niskarim, when you remember them, V'nasim, all the Ruchnias, the Kinyon that happened, Yemel Trefes Achnachamom. And the Rebbe said, this is all in the Pnim of the Sikha, in the text of the Sikha, that today is Nikva for this year, and for all years after this year, as a Yom Segula and a Eis Ratz. Chamisha BiTeves, the Rebbe called it the next year, Memchas, that is Kaviyas. For this year, when you re-experience what happened last year, and for every year that's going to be subsequent to this year, for a Yom Segula and for an Eis Ratz. And in the footnote, the Rebbe brings the Gemara B'negei to Chanukah, that by Chanukah it says, L'shana acheres kovim. When the Nes of Chanukah happened, it was fixed. It was nikva l'deiros the following year. So in Tafshin Mem Zayin, Hasidim celebrated, and in Tafshin Mem Ches, the Rebbe announced an official Yom Tov, an official Moed. And in that first Fabrengen, which means the Chamisha BiTeves, Shabbos Pashas Vayigash, Tafshin Mem Ches, and I want to also bavarn, I always tell you this, that in Tafshin Nun Beis, which is the Revival, the most recent Chamisha BiTeves, where you heard the Rebbe speak, the Rebbe called today not Hey Teves, but Chamisha BiTeves. He must have said it at least a half a dozen times, possibly the whole Fabrengen, they spoke about Chamisha BiTeves, and he referred to it not as Hey Teves, but Chamisha, but not once, every single time. So the name of today is not Hey Teves, it's Chamisha BiTeves. Why it's not yet caught on, I don't know, but if past performance is an indication of future results, sooner or later, today is not Hey Teves, it's Chamisha BiTeves. Now, what's the difference between Hey Teves and Chamisha BiTeves? It's like the difference between Tu B'Shvat and Chamisha B'Shvat. The Rebbe once spoke about that. It's not Tu B'Shvat, it's Chamisha B'Shvat. The Rebbe said that. And Al Derech Zeh andere Sachen. It's not Tu B'Yav, it's Chamisha B'Yav. And again, in those dates, the Rebbe actually explained what's the difference between saying the number and saying the words that represent that number. So today's Chamisha BiTeves. This is the name that Rebbe gave it in Tafshin Nun Beis. This takes 4 years after. But in Mem Ches, the entire Fabrengen was dedicated to Chamisha BiTeves. And what the Rebbe did in that Fabrengen, I'm now using my own words, was he established the Minhagei HaChag, the Minhagei HaMayit. Whenever you have a Yom Tiv, you have to have rituals to go along with it. Because if you have no rituals to go along with it, just the Ruchnius has no kiyum. Everything in Yiddishkeit is like Hamed Reshik Yerela HaMais. Everything in Yiddishkeit is always brought down into a deed. Chanukah, you light the Meneda, Al Pesach Beis Mebachutz, Ad Dekal you the Talmudoi, and you say Hallow. Purim, you read the Megillah, and you have Mishleach Monas, and Matanos Levyenim, and Sudas Purim. And Pesach, you sit with the children, and you eat matzah and mudder, and dal cases, and so on. What do you do Chamisha BiTeves? And the Teretz is, you buy Sfarim. And the whole Fabrengen was about the inyan of Sfarim. They made many points when it gets to Sfarim. The first point, which took a good portion of the Fabrengen, was this. The Rebbe said, this year is the 500th anniversary of the birth of the Beis Yosef. And the people who raised that issue were the Sfadi. The Rebbe mentioned that amongst Sfadi, but just when Sfadi, they made a big shturim at a 500th anniversary of the Beis Yosef. So you go back, Tov Shin Mem Ches, 500 years, it's Reish Rachem, Reish Ches Mem. Yeah, it's 5,248. The Beis Yosef lived almost 100 years. The Beis Yosef was the contemporary of the Arizal. He was mit a 40 Jahre älter. The Arizal passed away in his 30s. The Beis Yosef passed away in his 90s. And then you can't tell them shaking, you understand? Beis Yosef was born, come out 50 years before the Arizal was, and they were considered the same generation. And the Beis Yosef did. And by the Sfadim at that time, they were making a shturim. So the Rebbe said we should introduce another inyan, that Gedei Yisrael, we should commemorate the anniversaries. Like the Rebbe said, the anniversary of the Rambam's birthday, and the Rambam's Histalkus, and Al Derech said the Beis Yosef. And the Rebbe spoke a whole thing about the Sfarim of the Beis Yosef, and learning the Sfarim and having sales, and so forth. And then the Rebbe, a very big piece of the Fabrengen was dedicated talking about the Beis Yosef. And maybe it's a Loshan, Nefel Loshan, because the whole Parsha, the whole story of the Sfarim is about Eid Yosef Chai, and Bepashtus. Yosef means the Frierdiker Rebbe. And by the way, the word Beis Yosef is in Chumash. Where is Beis Yosef? Vayu Beis Yosef. In Parshas Miketz, last week's Parsha, you had in Beis Yosef, right? Where do these names of these Sfarim come from? We're not paying attention, right? Kesef Mishnah, it's in Parsha. In Parshas Miketz, you had the name of many Sfarim. The Beis Yosef is from Parshas Miketz. Okay. Then the Rebbe spoke about the meaning of purchasing Sfarim. And he spoke specific about him having a lot of Sfarim, buying Sfarim. And of course, also to learn in the Sfarim. The Rebbe also spoke about children. These are the minhagim of Chamisha BiTeves. Children should be encouraged to buy Sfarim and to have Sfarim of a Gishmak in Sfarim. These are the minhagim of the day. This is today's Hamantashi, and today's Grager, and today's Latkis is Sfarim. Yeah? And then the Rebbe spoke also about libraries. That people should make libraries and strengthen libraries of Sfarim, and especially if you're in a position to help the library around which the whole tumult was, which is the union of base Agudas, specifically of Agudas Chassidic Chabad, the Rebbe's library, to expand the library, to beautify the library, to send Sfarim to the library, and so on. So these are the minhagim of today. That made a Yom Tov. Chamisha BiTeves Tov Shin Mem Ches, not Tov Shin Mem Zayin. 1988. It was Shabbos. The whole Farbrengen is written down. There's no tape, and it's edited by the Rebbe. And you could read the ganze Pasha of how the Rebbe announced the Yom Tov and explained the minhag Yachad. So the bottom line is, Chamisha BiTeves has a neshama and a guf. And the guf is supposed to bring the neshama. The guf is the niskarim, which affects the nasim, which is the neshama of Teves. The neshama of Teves is hu b'chayim, that the Rebbe lives, that a yid, whose life was never his guf, but his life was a emunas Hashem, and avas Hashem, and yiras Hashem. There's no hefsek. But you have to have a raya. You need to have proof that hu b'chayim. What's the proof? What's the indication of that he is still alive? And you have to kind of a proof that a goyish judge sitting in an American court of law will say, yeah, he is still alive. And the proof is zarei b'chayim. The proof is the chassidim, the seeds that the Rebbe plants that are going in the ways of the Rebbe and doing what the Rebbe wants. This is the biggest raya for hu b'chayim. Hu b'chayim because, in other words, zarei b'chayim is a raya. The ikir is hu b'chayim, that the Rebbe lives. And the sidma of the Rebbe living is hu b'chayim. So I've been speaking to younger people. This is my first crowd. Yeah? What should I call it? Contemporaries. There aren't too many contemporaries in this room. But for the most part, I'm speaking to kids. And I'm saying to them, this is your Yom Tov. Why? Because you were born after Gimel Tammuz. You were born after Hey Teves. And you're Chassidim. And some of you are Chassidim in such a way that you push it, embarrass your parents. You should embarrass your parents. This phenomena is not logical. It doesn't make sense. Everybody understands that a movement needs an energy source, a battery. And the movement's battery is the Rebbe, the Siyador. And when there's a physical helim, it affects the movement. And when you see the movement growing and living with all of its chesreinis and expanding and being alive and being positive, that's a siman that the engine is still running. What's the symptom? What's the biggest raya of the freshness, of the presence, of the today, of this energy? The children, the next generation. The Zarei B'chayim, who literally are Zarei B'chayim, they were born after Gimel Tammuz and after Chamisha BiTeves and after Chavei Shvat. And this is the Zarei B'chayim, which is the hu b'chayim. So I said to the kids, to the girls, and to the boys, Hey Teves is your Yom. You are Chamisha, your physical presence on this earth. This is Chamisha BiTeves. So this Yom Tov has a gufa and a neshama. The neshama is hu b'chayim, and the raya is zarei b'chayim, and the guf is sfarim. So I wanted to say something a little different than I normally say. Farvos, because I've been making the same speech over here for 20-something years, and I've said it so many times that it's even possible you remember from last year what I said, or from the year before what I said. Over the last 23 years, we have Farbrengen every year, Chamisha BiTeves, and we tell the story, and we celebrate, and we try to excite ourselves or to inspire ourselves with the notion that the Rebbe is alive. And the Rebbe said once for Farbrengen a Loshen, bei uns und in uns und mit uns, by us, in us, and with us. The Rebbe lives, and our lives are a symptom of the Rebbe's living. It's the neshama, but the guf is sfarim. So I decided this year I want to talk about Sfarim. I'll talk about the guf, the minhag, the mitzvah of Teves. Why? Because the way Yiddishkeit works is that in other words, if you want to explain this in words and in form, you would say this. Comes Teves, and you're not in the mood. Why you're not in the mood? For you it's hard to say hu b'chayim because you have a problem with zarei b'chayim. It's hard for you. Not everybody is 100% in the right mind of the matziv. And there's many people, b'chlal, when it comes to a Yom Tov and to a Shabbos, I'm not in the mood. So what does Teves say to you? Do it. You don't feel it, fine. Do it. Just do it. It's Pesach, eat matzah. You don't feel like you're a free person. You don't feel like you're rid of all constraints. You don't feel the derech cheres. Esak azayis matzah. Trink dalet cases. Zitz b'haseber. V'higada talavincha. You do it. And the chinuch says, everybody knows this, the chinuch says that acharei hapu'ula is nimshachim alavavis. The human nature that when you do what you're supposed to, the heart follows. If you want your heart to bring to action, very, very often it gets stuck. There's a Meitzar Agorin and there's Kuruma, the Posig, the Me'ui, the Banach, there's all kinds of blockages that don't bring it from the higher levels to the low. But if you do it, the Maisa, you do it, you eat the Gazayis Matzah, you shake the Lulav, you hear the 100 Kalis of Shefer, and so on. So the Ruchnius, the Neshama, the Pnimius follows. So what is the deed of Teves? The deed of Teves is Sfarim. And the truth is, I've not talked about it that much, and I'm guilty. And the reason I haven't talked about that much is because I'm so obsessed. I really am obsessed with the idea of Hu B'Chaim, the Pnimius, the Neshama of Teves. But the Teves has also a goof. And I want to talk to the goof of Teves. And the goof of Teves is Sfarim. So I want to share an insight with you, okay? And I hope this doesn't become too involved. But I actually prepared, I have copies, if anybody wants to see. I made Pashut copies of pages of the Hemshech Haim Beis, which is based on the Pad. It's a fascinating thing. Books are called Sfarim, Sefer, Samach Pei Reish. Now in Lashon HaKodesh, there is an idea of Sharoshim. That words have a build, a geboy. And that each word's build is a whole. I know Diktuk like you know Chinese. But there's a shita that holds that every word has to have 3 oisiyas sharashes, 3 letters. Some say it doesn't have to have 3, it could be 2, it could be 1. But the way they teach it in school, and I never learned it in school because I'm not a girl, didn't learn the basic where they teach these things. Every word has a shayrish, and the shayrish has 3 letters. Samach peiresh. And there are many, many words that have exactly the same shayrish. Samach peiresh is a word in Lashon HaKodesh which represents many, many different things. So there's a sugya in Kabbalah that brings 4 words that have the same shayrish. Samach peiresh. Or 5, let me say. The foundation of the conversation is the word Eser Sfiris. What's the root of the word Eser Sfiris? Samach Peiresh. And Eser Sfiris, whose Shadish is Samach Peiresh, has, in the Maimah they bring 4, and there are others also. Number 1, Mispar. To count. To enumerate. And counting and enumerating shows on Medida V'Agbola, shows on limit. The Eser Sfiris are a number. Eser V'Leitesha, Eser V'Yachas. You count and you enumerate. But when you count something and you enumerate it, you're fixing it, you're locking it in. You're saying it's this and it's nothing else. And any person who's ever learned anything in his life knows that limiting something and fixing something is not a bad thing. It's very important. The skill of learning and the skill of teaching is making things clear. And to make something clear, it has to be limited. It means this, it doesn't mean something else. When you attach a number to something, you fix it. You make it very simple. This is the number that it represents. And on the other hand, you all know it says in Chassidus, the Yidden were counted in the Chumash, Kama Pavim. And it's brought in Chassidus from the Shalah and so on and so forth, that Davar Shebe Mispah, Davar Shebe Minyan, Lei Batal. Something which is counted is never batal, right? How do you buy tomatoes in the store? By the pound, right? How do you buy, I don't know what the examples are, raisins in the store? By weight. By the box, right? By the box. How do you buy avocados? By the piece. Why? Because it's apparently more expensive, or at least they think it can be more expensive, right? So there's a davar shebe mishko, there's a davar shebe mido, and there's a davar shebe minyan. The cheapest commodities are sold by volume, by how much you can put into a box. A raisin more, a raisin less, it fits into the box, it's in the same price. Things of greater value are sold by weight. Not volume, but weight. And the most precious things are sold by the number. And the halacha is, davar shebe minyan lei batal. If you have something which is counted, like a piece of meat, which is not stamazeh, a piece of meat that you weigh on the scale, but it's counted, 1, 2, 3, there's no bittul b'shishim. There's no bittul be'elef. It's never bottle. Something which is counted is absolute. So the word sefer, one of the words that the word sefer connotes is a counting. Counting is very distinguishing, limiting, but it also represents something which is absolute. That's the first type of the word sfiras. The second type is the word sipur, a story. Sipur, telling a story. And telling a story, of course, means telling a story that you don't know yet. You don't have to tell a person a story that he knows already. You only have to tell a person a story that he doesn't yet know. And in telling this story, you're revealing something to that person. So another shayrish that's connected to the word sfires is samach peiresh, is a story. A story means a vehicle, a medium through which you're able to come to another person and give him something which he doesn't yet have. And of course, when you come to a person and you give him something he doesn't yet have, and he gets it, it's an achievement. Especially if the story that you're telling him and the message that he's getting has to do with the Eibishter and the purpose of the world and the higher reality of this world, which is godliness and goodness, and how you're supposed to live it on a practical level. So when you hear the story of Matan Torah and Avraham Avinu and of the Tayag Mitzvahs HaTorah, which are also told as a story, and it changes your life, that because of this you live in a certain way, that's an incredible achievement. That's the second type of the word Sfiris. What's the third type of the word Sfiris? The third type of the word Sfiris is Sfirus or Behirus. To shine. Machen lichtig. Right? The Zohar is called Zohar. Favos. Va'maskilim yazhiru ke Zohar horokia. And Zohar also means to glance, to gleam, to shine, to make illuminated. And the word Sfiras also was in Sfiras, but Machen lichtig. That not only do you have something which you can count, which makes it fixed and absolute, like mitzvah, and not only do those things that you count have a story to tell about how you're supposed to live your life, but those things which you can count, right? You have tayag mitzvahs and not tafreishad beis mitzvahs, not tafreishad dalad mitzvahs. And every one of these mitzvahs is a story of how a Yid is supposed to live on this world and change it. But it brings lichtigkeit into both. Lichtigkeit. That's the third type of the word Sfira. And the fourth type of the word Sfira is Sefer. Azay steht in Hemshchaim Beis. And the Rebbe Rashav says something very, very interesting. He says, what's a Sefer? He says, normally, a Sefer is white pages with black letters. But when you have, now I'm using my own words, if you have white pages with black letters, you can't call it a Sefer. You have to say what Sefer it is. Because there could be many different black letters. You can have a Sefer Bereshis, you have a Sefer Shmos, Sefer Vayikra, a Sefer Bamidbar, Sefer. How can you have a Sefer and the name is Sefer? And the answer is if the pages are blank. A book, right, that has no pages, no words, and no lines, a blank book is called a Sefer, Stam. And the Rebbe Rashab explains that a Sefer Stam means, what do you read when you're looking at, what do you read when you're looking at blank pieces of paper? What are you seeing? What are you seeing when you're looking at blank pieces of paper? I recently sent around a gewaldige word. Someone sent around a moedendike word. I showed it to my father, I was very impressed. A person had a bunch of students, and he handed them a piece of paper and said, I want you to look at the piece of paper and tell me what you see. It was a blank piece of paper with a dot, a black point in the center. And he asked his students to each one write down what they saw. So he had 50 students, 60 students, everyone were ganz a pilpul. And everybody saw the dot. Not one person made reference to the empty page. And after they handed in their sheets, he says, look at you. I gave you a blank piece of paper with a dot. All you saw was the form. Nobody saw the possibility. What's a blank piece of paper? You can put anything on it. Right? Where do you have in Pirkei Avos blank pieces of paper? Where do you have in Pirkei Avos blank pieces of paper? If you teach Torah to an old person, to a wise, to a already learned person, is kidyoy ksuva al yor mochok. You take a piece of paper that's got pencil all over it, and you take the best eraser in the universe, and you wipe it clean, and then you write something new. The paper is not clear. Now maybe your eraser is so good that you made the paper clear, but in the nimshal, if you have a human being who has an experience and he has a life, and you come, okay, forget everything you learned till now, I'm teaching Teves Havayim. And maybe he succeeds, but he didn't forget. The page is not blank. Halei me Teira yeled. If you teach Teira to a child, It's L'dyoi Ksuva Am Yor Chodash. It's ink written on a blank piece of paper. Now before you put the first drop of ink on that piece of paper, what do you have? You have infinity. That's mamish ain't safe. Because this piece of paper can tolerate anything. And the idea that this piece of paper can tolerate anything doesn't only mean you could put anything you want there. It's that the inyan of this piece of paper is every single thing. And then you write something and you define it, and you limit it. So the Rebbe Rashab therefore says in the word Sfira, Eser Sfiris, Sfiris ain't case, Sfiris agnuzis, Shmoisav, Shemes, and shame, like it's brought in Chassidus. You have 4 madregas. The first madrega of Sfiris is that they're counted and they're fixed, and they're permanent. The second madrega of Sfiris is that they tell a story. The third madrega of Sfiris is that they reveal a light. And the fourth madrega of Sfiris is that they reveal infinity in possibility. And the Maimed it's explained in Aces of Kabbalah. I don't want to say Aces of Kabbalah. I'd rather simplify it and have you understand and tell you what's written there. We'll all walk away confused. So the Rebbe made a Yom Tov out of Sfarim. Now most of the Sfarim of this Yom Tov have words written on them. And of course that's the idea. You don't want to have blank pieces of paper. You want to have Sfarim that were written by Gedei Yisrael, Amitiyim, right? Torah? Yeah. But Apipnimis Hanyanim, the minhagim associated with the day have to do with Sfarim. And Sfarim, I think you could say, represents all of these different madregas. The Rebbe made a Yom Tov. And it's a Yom Tov about something very, very deep. The neshama of today, the pnimis of today, has to do with the Rebbe. Right? The Chassidim always say, Rabbi Elkan verbringt about it at the time. It as Kislev was a kitter against Chassidus. Hey, Teves a kitter against the Rebbe. Literally. In the times of the Alter Rebbe, the issue on the table was the legitimacy of Chassidus. Which means, depending on your angle, if you were a Misnagid, it's nothing. And if you were a Chassid, the world isn't deserving of it. It's a kitrug. 2 perspectives on the same inyan. And there's a suffix which perspective will win out. And the end has to be that it should be taked, that Chassidus adav pnimi atzmi, and at the same time we should deserve it. And when there was a Yetes Kislev, there was a Didan Notzach, Yad Chasidim Hol Halyena, Chassidus one. This was a story that questioned, as the Rebbe used the expression, the benkel, the chair. The idea of a Rebbe is adav nitzchi. The Rebbe is an eternal thing. There's adav nitzchi, is an eternal thing. Why? Because the Rebbe is not a goof. I have to tell the kid in Nacht by Nacht. There's a sefer that's called Teves Emes. The name is called Teves Emes. The sefer came out 5 years ago in 2012, Tafet Shin Ayin Beis, to mark and to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the establishment of the yeshivas Teves Emes. First it was in Hebron and now it's in Yerushalayim. So Rabbi Shir Yuzevich, no Malach Yom Hashanah Zayin, gave out a sefer called Teves Emes. It's the history of the yeshiva. It's the biography, not of a person, but of a Moshe. But in this sefer, he doesn't talk about walls. He talks about people. And he dedicates large sections of the sefer to a variety of different Rosh Yeshivas and Mashpiyim that pass through Teves Emes. But the Gelas HaChiseres, the reason to buy this book and to read it, is because he immortalizes a chassid who unfortunately is forgotten to history because of lack of hemshech, whose name was Rabbi Alter Simchovich. Rabbi Alter Simchovich passed away. He was 44 years old, I think, 45 years, very, very young. And his wife died more than 10 years before him. So he raised 3 daughters alone. And when he passed away, they were also still very young. He was a very big chassid, Bal Mesiras Nefesh, with not a comfortable, not a happy life, to put it mildly. Rabbi Alter was in Eretz Yisrael when the Frierdiker Rebbe came to Eretz Yisrael in 1920 in Tapish BiTeves. And he didn't know where to put himself. He was crazy. The Rebbe. For 3 weeks he ran around with the Rebbe. Wherever the Rebbe went. The yeshiva, Teves Emes, was in Yerushalayim. And the Bacham was sitting and learning, and of course the Bacham went to see the Rebbe. And the Rebbe came to the yeshiva, Teves Emes, up fast in Zechmatzah Tisha B'Av. The end of Tisha B'Av, the Rebbe ate, imagine, the Rebbe came to the dining room, and I'm sure it wasn't a very ornate dining room, to eat the meal after Tisha B'Av with the Talmidim. And they washed, and they ate, and the Rebbe said a maimer afterwards, the Rebbe said Sichas, and the Bachrim was sitting, imagine sitting by the same table with the Rebbe, eating a meal. You understand? It was not interesting to you. And Paltiel is like a caged animal. He's in the Rebbe's presence, and he's looking at his Talmidim, and he feels like they don't understand in front of whom they're sitting. They just don't appreciate it. They're acheretz, and they behaved, and they ate with a fork and a knife, and they ate slowly, and they chewed their food, and they wiped their mouth with a napkin, and they didn't eat too much, and they looked at the Rebbe, and when the Rebbe stopped eating, they stopped eating. I'm sure they did all the right things, but he didn't feel that they had him, but he is. You understand? A goof. Yeah, you have a lakus in a goof. It's very hard not to see the goof. You know, the Rebbe once said that it bothers him that when he davens, people look at him, and he verbalized it, if you're looking at the Rebbe and you're seeing Rebbe, it's fine. But if you're standing and looking at the Rebbe and what you're seeing is flesh and blood, that's no good. Looking at the Rebbe, you don't see Rebbe. So when the Frierdiker Rebbe left, he fabrenged with the Bachem, and he was giving his neshama out. And he was screaming at them. Was hat gesehen? A nose hat gesehen? A lakus hat gesehen? What did you see? You saw a nose. You saw godless. He was trying to get them to get past the fact that the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe, was very handsome, gorgeous, and healthy, and he looked like a king. But the lakus, Getlichkeit, Atzmus und Hus, Melubish and Aguf Gashmi. He wanted them to hear that, and they were not getting it. He just didn't know how to give it. You understand? And that's the story of Hey Teves. It's an asayid. You're seeing a Rebbe Aguf, and you're seeing a Guf, like the rest of the Kurtabak, like a Metap Meguf, Filpen Guf. If you use physical eyes to look at the Rebbe, you see a physical Guf. When you look at the Betruchni is the eyes of the Rebbe, you see a lakus. And the whole pilpul, the whole plukt of Hey Teves was, what am I looking at? And the guy paskind hu b'chayim, because this is an inner lakit. It's getlachkeit. It's not a guf gashmi. It's getlachkeit and hu b'chayim. And this is the Yemei of Hey Teves. And the Rebbe connected it to Sfarim. That the way you celebrate Hey Teves is with Sfarim. So it's comes again Hey Teves, let's say, 1 year. And you're not in the mood. It's overcast, it's raining. People don't want to come out of their home. So the teretz is, you do the minhagim of Hey Teves. Just like when it comes Chanukah and you're in a bad mood, you light the Beneda and it raises your mood. When it comes Purim, you're not in the mood, you go to Shul, you the Megillah, you see the children running around and having fun, it raises your spirits. When it comes Hey Teves and you're not in the mood, you go and you eat a Sefer. And in a Sefer, if I'm Fashid in a Madregas. And I'm suggesting, with that this is a drush. And drush you can say as much as you want. In other words, anybody can say a drush, but that's how credible drush is. But this is the drosha for today. I'm saying something which I never said before on Hey Teves. The Rebbe made a Yom Tov out of a Sefer. Because in a Sefer you have 4 inyanim, or 5 inyanim, or 6 inyanim. A Sefer is from the word Sfiris. And Sfiris means it reveals godliness to the world. And a Sefer reveals godliness to the world by being counted. A Sefer Torah has a precise number of letters. And being counted means everything is exact and precise. And in our practical lives, this means how we learn Torah and we do mitzvahs, to be precise. And a Sefer tells a story. And the story that the Sefer tells reveals not what you're doing, but the meaning of what you're doing. And a Sefer shines a light that the story that you're telling is not just a nice story and a heartwarming story, it's a story of lichtigkeit. Right? What's the difference between light and ideas? Ideas come into your mind and make you smarter. Light comes into your life and changes nothing. But you see everything in a totally different context because it's lichtig, it's illuminated, it lifts you up. And last but not least, a sefer means possibility. The idea of Sfiris is that it represents something which is a book, a blank piece of paper. A blank piece of paper. On a blank piece of paper, everything is written until you write something. So the Rebbe made a Yom Tov and he attached a minich to the Yom Tov. Mitzvahs hayoyim. Mitzvahs hayoyim b'sfarim. And the mitzvah hayoyim b'sfarim is when you go and you buy a sefer on this day and you're thinking, listen, the Rebbe made a Yom Tov. This is how we're supposed to sell it. I'm getting koif my sefer. So you go ahead and you buy a book, or you buy 2 books, or 10 books, or whatever you can afford, and whatever you're in the mood of, and whatever you're interested in, you buy sfarim. In that sefer you have Hu B'Chaim. In that sefer you have Hu B'Chaim because of Zare B'Chaim, because you went out of your way and you bought a book even though you're not in the mood. Bemis, you're not in the mood. So you did the mice of the day. Just like you eat a kazayas matzah, you're not in the mood, so you have Pesach. So you go and you buy a sefer today, a big sefer, or a little sefer, a cheap sefer, an expensive sefer, and And this is how you have a connection to this day, to this Ebu B'chayim, right? And the Alta Vort Salavesen, Zeh Sefer Teildes Adam. The ultimate Sefer is the life of a person. A human being is a Sefer. A human being is a Sefer in all of these respects. A human being was created to reveal godliness in this world. A human being counts. Everything is counted. We all know this, right? What do we know? Huh? What do we know? That it says in Hayem Yem about Sfiras ha'omer, right? It's the same word. Samach Peiresh. As the Chassidim from Alten Rebbe haben Bechanam gezählt. Alten Rebbe's Chassidim are always counting. Because when you count, you fix, you lock in, you determine. You're made to do magbu. And the Rabbeim were very, very favorably disposed towards this idea of Nachanan Tzeilim. And then it also tells a story. And it brings a light into the world. And it creates infinite possibilities. That's what a person is. Like a baby that's born, yeah? You count his fingers and his toes. And you look at the little baby, and he tells a wonderful story which is yet to happen. And he brings light into the house. Nismala Abayas Kula Eira. And he also is a possibility that's infinite. And the word Sefer represents the highest madrega, not the lowest madrega. You would think that the book, you have mamas, yeah? So you had a mitzvah from one of your boys. Your son had no idea what he was saying, but he said it so many times that you remembered and he forgot it, yeah? The Eibishter created the world b'shleish sfarim. B'sefer, b'sipur. B'sfar, b'sipur, there's different ways of pronouncing it. It says in Sefer Yetzirah. B'sefer, b'sipur. Sefer means onavav and mitavav. Remember, your kid forgot, but you remember the onavav and the mitavav. You made you nuts with the onavav and the mitavav, because that's part of the mind that the kids start memorizing 3 days before the bar mitzvah. Yeah, and then a rush, and then no time, and then no patience. Yeah. The first pa'isa, man, they all know that. Why? Because they heard it from their friends. But the mitavav and the onavav, they weren't paying attention enough. Yeah. But in the model of Sefer and Sipur, Sefer is the lowest thing. The book is the lowest. Why? Because the book is beat, it's fixed. You can't put any more words in a book. Higher than Sefer is Sipur, a story. A story is written in a book. The story before it's written in the book is also limited, but it can be said in different ways. And then there's the Sefer, which is the storyteller. Not only is he not limited to the story that's written in a book, he's not even limited to one story. He can tell a second story, and a third story, and a fourth story. So in the Bar Mitzvah Maimer, the Sefer is the lowest madrege. Underneath Sefer and underneath Sipur is Sefer. But in Hemsh Chaim Beis, the Rebbe Rashab says nit azeh. Because a Sefer means a book with no words, with the possibility. So we had a shtickle fabrengen for Chamisha BiTeves. We'll all go out and buy books. I mitzvah Hashem, I'll also go out and buy a Sefer. You know how it is. Whenever I talk to people about Hagi Hayim, the Yebishter sends a special Yetzirah. That's good. After the Shkia, buy as many Sfarim as you want. He's a Uman B'mlachte. Whenever I tell other people what we need to do, I end up being the person. Hypocrisy is more pronounced when you inspire others. So believe me, I'll find if you miss. I'm going to go from that Sefer. I'm going to Sfarim, or at least think about buying Sfarim. And you should put a lichtelach on the tish. Yeah, the kids should come home from school. There should be a tablecloth and lichtelach, and big day Shabbos if you could, and if you could serve nicer food, different food that the kids should feel, just like they felt in Yitzchak Kislev, that this house celebrates what they're learning about in school. It'll be an incredible thing, and it's right. It's a Moyed, it's a Chag, it's a Yom Tif, it's a Yom Segula, and it's a Eis Ratzon. I'm just going to finish. If you remember that year, 30 years ago, it was a Tuesday like this. So Rabbi came downstairs, and then there was Sichas every day came out until Monday. Thursday, the Rebbe announced that now there's an Eis Ratzon. That means to say, now is an opportunity where you can ask for things that normally you can't ask for, and get them. And the Rebbe said people should use this opportunity. You can write to the Rebbe anything you want, and you'll get what you're asking for. And the Rebbe said, to make it easier on people, he said, I'm not going to read them. I'm just going to put them down the scene of the Rebbe the Shver, so you don't have to be inhibited by me, because you can write whatever you want, and it'll go straight to Atmos of Muslims. And in the course of 2 days, tens of thousands of Pedyenis came to the Rebbe from all over the world. The Rebbe went to the oil with 2 carloads of Pedyenis. 2 carloads. And believe me, it was by no means only Lubavitch. Many, many people who are not only not our friends, but are closer to the opposite of friends, they heard there's an Eis Ratzon, they had a memory lapse of their official position on Lubavitch, and they all came running, this one for health, and this one for Parnasa, and this one for Chiduchim. So the Shaila becomes, this year again, you have also the same days, Zayin Teves and Ches Teves, You have to say that if Niskarim Nasim, you go and you buy a book today, so Thursday's an Eis Ratzon. In other words, if we connect to the day, I'm just thinking out loud. Every year people ask me this question, so I'm asking the question also. Just like Rebbe was Kevei Yom Tov, and he says, Yom Amel Niskarim Nasim, you do the Inyanim of the day. You do the Inyanim of the day. So you have the Neshama of the day, and the deeds are Sfarim, and the Neshama is Ubachayim. In conjunction with this, the Rebbe said that these days are an Eis Ratzon. Always bet na good zachen. So we should use these days, and we should see brachas b'teva nirav nigle. And the rikir is that the hu b'chayim and the zari b'chayim should be without complications and without asterisks and without explanations and without speeches, because it should be the nigla kveda d'shem b'roko bosa yachtav the fleishika eigen zon zed the hu b'chayim eichet in gashmias kipshuta. Okay, a guten Yom Tov.